If rust has appeared on the body, you have a car with a difficult fate. It is wiser to refuse further inspection, no matter what stories you are told. Know that with careful, and most importantly, trouble-free operation, such a phenomenon is nonsense. The windshield wiper trapezoid does not tolerate chemical attacks. By 70 to 100,000 kilometers, the axles of the leashes turn sour. If the brushes begin to move sluggishly, remove the mechanism, disassemble, remove rust and lubricate. Then the knot will last the same amount. And if you delay the repair, you will have to buy not only a trapezoid, but often a gear motor. It happens that the gear motors, actuators, of the central lock fail. The defect is not massive, but very insidious. It seemed that he closed all the doors, having heard the familiar knock of the mechanisms, and one of them took it and did not work, leaving the car open. Look for your good. The problem with fogging headlights is solved simply. Remove the foam plugs from the L-shaped drainage tubes. Sometimes these plugs become so clogged that they no longer allow the air needed for ventilation. If it does not help, then the cap has moved away from the headlight housing. Then, after degreasing the surfaces, we seal the joint with silicone sealant. Often, owners complain about a knock in the instrument panel. The speedometer needle twitches in time with it. Those who drove domestic cars know that the main reason is the jamming of the speedometer cable. Less often, the shield itself or the gearbox on the gearbox is to blame. With an electronic shield, such problems are extremely rare, and, apart from the speed sensor, there is nothing to sin on. Without waiting for the desired coolness from the air conditioner, fill the system. Although the diagnostic equipment does not see obvious leaks, over 2 to 3 years, the refrigerant gradually disappears. For Accent, this is the norm, and most likely, expensive parts, including a radiator, will not have to be changed. But with the engine radiator, how lucky. Sometimes, even in the salty Moscow winters, it serves for years, and sometimes it flows along the rolling of tanks in the most greenhouse conditions. Watch the liquid level in the expansion tank. The engine cooling radiator is not famous for longevity. Sometimes after the first winter, antifreeze begins to leak along the rolling of the tanks. Engine. Accent motors are very reliable. They start up easily in winter and do not eat oil even with runs over 200 to 250,000 kilometers. It is only necessary to change the timing belt along with the rollers on time, for Korean-assembled cars every 60,000, and for those assembled at Tag AZ, every 50,000 kilometers. Although, according to experience, ours can easily withstand the same 60,000, but the regulations are the law. It is strange that there is not a word about the chain connecting the intake camshaft to the exhaust camshaft on the back of the engine, above the flywheel. Keep in mind that after 100 to 120,000 kilometers the chain should be changed, otherwise the sprockets will begin to wear out intensively and subsequently you will have to seriously fork out. About 3 years ago, Tag AZ began to supply engines without an upper chain damper. It was simply abolished. By the way, Gets and Elantra got under this campaign. As a result, by 70 to 90,000 kilometers, the chain devoid of a damper begins to rattle, creating acoustic discomfort. If it's seriously annoying, put a damper, part 24,432 to 26,000, which is quite simple. It is attached under the standard bolts of the rear camshaft bearing caps. To do this, you need to remove the valve cover. Do not put it, it's okay, it practically does not affect the resource of asterisks. The chain connecting the camshafts usually lasts more than 100,000 kilometers, even in the version without the upper shoe of the damper, as in the photo. Every 30 to 40,000 kilometers, dealers recommend flushing the nozzles. And although we are often skeptical about this, why stop the machine from working? This is exactly the case when you should heed the advice. The fact is that the valves of the G4ED engines quickly become overgrown with soot, leading to interruptions at idle and a deterioration in startup. And flushing the nozzles at the same time removes growths from the valve plates, eliminating this defect. By 100 to 120,000 kilometers, wait for the exhaust corrugation to burn out, unless, of course, you break it ahead of schedule in a rut. In addition to the booming exhaust, which is hard not to hear, the check engine lamp on the instrument panel will light up. Diesel versions were not officially supplied to our market. It's a pity, because the motors of the U-engine series have proven themselves very well in Europe. It is possible that here they would have worked without complaints, if not for Hyundai's policy. Our diesel fuel is not so bad. Although the steel engine tray is not as fragile as aluminum, we recommend installing a power protection for the engine compartment. At the same time, cover the release corrugation. Transmission. Dealers recommend changing the oil in the boxes every 90,000 kilometers. We advise you to adhere to this requirement. There will be no problems with the manual gearbox, but you will most likely get to know the clutch closely by 100 to 110,000 kilometers. Then you will know what a release bearing is. Climbing along the influx on the bell housing, it gradually gnaws through the surface of the guide and eventually warps. It squeals like a piglet. Those who have ears will hear and change on time, along with the basket and the driven disc. As a rule, by this time it will be time. If you don't hear it, fork out for a new bell, 21,500 rubles. However, there are craftsmen who are ready for 3,000 rubles. Melt the missing metal. But the box, whatever one may say, will have to be disassembled, otherwise the input shaft oil seal and, possibly, the shaft itself will burn out. The machine of the Alpha Beta series is also ready to give a surprise. At the same 100 to 110,000 kilometers, it will enter emergency mode, most often complaining about overheating. First, clean the radiator cells. If it does not help, change the oil with the filter. It is under the hydraulic plate. And if the box is still weird, then the way to repair it. Fortunately, all kinds of services have studied this unit quite well. They literally repair it with their eyes closed, quickly and inexpensively, and even with a guarantee. The weak link in the rear multi-link is the same bushings and stabilizer struts, as well as the rear wishbones. The latter are often bent, carelessly handing over in reverse. Suspension. There were no particular complaints about the pendants. There is nothing special in the fact that the stabilizer struts along with the bushings wear out by 80,000 kilometers, on many machines even faster. There are problems with shock absorbers. If it's leaking, you're lucky, they'll replace it under warranty. And if they knock or stop holding, you are tormented to prove a defect. By the way, contacting Hyundai dealers is not always effective. Many, even the most experienced and adequate, are not authorities for Tag AZ, which looks absurd. If at the Taganrog automobile plant they don't trust Korean partners who have given full authority to their official services, it's time to change the emblem on the car.